so excited to share with you today all these exciting developments that we have going on with DataHub with the MCP server. So let me start by sharing my screen here. And I'm going to walk you through a little bit about where we come from, what we're headed, and then we're going to end it with a pretty big announcement about something that we're releasing to you. You'll also see me do or attempt a live demo a couple times involving agents interacting with DataHub. And so hopefully we'll see how that goes, and wish me luck. So coming in, what we're going to talk about is letting Genie out of the bottle and uncorking Cortex with context. So why now? There's agents have existed, DataHub's existed. But we're feeling like we're at a really unique point in how people are changing how they're interacting with data. And we noticed that when we started the DataHub project, we were thinking a lot about when we were thinking about context, when we were thinking about data discovery and these issues, data governance. It was primarily about how we can enable humans to do these things. But we're noticing there's a massive shift going on in the industry. I think everyone can agree. We feel like we're really at an inflection point where things are changing, where it's not just humans looking for context and using data, but it's humans and also AI agents. And we've really been thinking about how the world's changing and what that means for DataHub and how we can adapt. So we had the chance to attend the Snowflake Data Summit and also the Databricks summits all in San Francisco this year. And there was so much buzz and excitement about the new things coming out of both of these platforms. I'm particularly excited about Snowflake Cortex, AgentBricks, Genie. And here's some screenshots of, I've been playing around with that, and I'm sure everyone else has as well. I mean, these are amazing tools where you can come in, ask natural language questions, and get answers from your data. And it really feels pretty magical working with it. At the same time, just like context is important for humans when they're thinking about data, context is also important for agents. So, for example, I might ask what our mobile app conversion rate is, and this is something I asked Genie, and sometimes it can make miscalculations. So in this case, without understanding the context behind the meaning of conversion rate in that metric, it made a miscalculation, and the number was not accurate. Here I see a conversion rate over 100%. So when we think about these tools like Genie and Cortex, they're so powerful and so magical, but in some ways they're limited by the context that they have access to. And we see DataHub as this perfect solution to provide that context, let these tools out of the bottle, and really let us achieve all those goals of agent-powered data discovery and data querying that we've been dreaming of. So when we were thinking about these tools and where DataHub fits in, as I was saying earlier, DataHub has been helping humans think about finding and safely using the authoritative sources for a job since its initial inception many years ago. And just like humans have this need, we realize that agents have that exact same problem. If somebody asks an agent or some LLM a question, it also has that same need to find and safely use the authoritative sources for the job. So when thinking about how we can help improve agents, we wanted to start thinking about what are the lessons that we've learned from providing context to humans. So we boiled that down to 3 core lessons. Lesson 1 was relevancy matters. And this is something that we really learned the hard way. If I search for something like customer in a DataHub instance, and I'm sure a lot of people in the audience would relate to this, I might get many responses. I could see hundreds or thousands or sometimes tens of thousands of matches for these core terms. And the process of just sorting through and understanding hundreds or thousands or tens of thousands of results that is an immense amount of overhead. And when we were working with the early adopters of DataHub, something that we really learned over and over again was that people demanded that DataHub be excellent at finding not just all the matches, but finding the right matches for the query. So we spent so much time thinking about what kind of metadata, what kind of signals, what kind of matches should things bubble up to the top, and found that really focusing on relevancy is how we can help humans discover and use trusted data. So lesson 1 was relevancy matters. Lesson 2, context matters. So we might have contexts in all sorts of different places. You're going to have upstream production databases. You'll have different types of event hubs or event streams streaming this data between those production databases. Each one of those has context locked in it. Then that data might be synced into warehouses. There might be jobs syncing that in, other streaming jobs. You might pull in other tools like Fivetran, for example, to sync data into the warehouse. There might be multiple warehouses at with different contexts locked in each one of them. And then there's always going to be downstream applications, machine learning models, feature tables, APIs, BI tools. And each one of those also has its own set of context. And having that context distributed already is immensely valuable. However, if you can't pull it together and provide it in one centralized place, you really lose the magic of all this information that you've curated and collected. So it's not just enough to have that context distributed across your system, but you need to be able to pull it together and bring it into one exact place. So context matters. Then the third lesson that we learned is that ubiquity matters. So we can have that context pulled into DataHub, but if we don't then provide it to all the places where people are doing their work, then we're really inhibiting the power that DataHub can provide. So that's why we spent a lot of time thinking not just how we can pull, organize, and bring all that context together into DataHub, but how we can also then push that out into tools like Databricks or Snowflake or all the tools where you're doing your work. So those are the 3 lessons that we've learned, again, while thinking about how to help humans gain context. Relevancy matters, context matters, and ubiquity matters. But again, as I said, we're hitting this inflection point, and it's not just humans who have this need for context anymore, but it's agents as well. So we started thinking, well, what does this mean for DataHub in this new world? So let me pop out here and let's take a scenario. Let's say I was interested in trying to understand how customer lifetime value is looking in my business. So in the pre-agent world, I might pop into my DataHub instance. I might start doing searches for things like customer, transactions, and things like that, looking through results, reading tables. But as we know, that produces a huge amount of information I have to process and think through and understand and analyze. And we know that processing and thinking through, analyzing, and summarizing lots of information is something that agents do incredibly well. So we decided to hook up Claude Desktop to DataHub. So that way, rather than having to interact directly with DataHub, think about the queries that I need to write, analyze all the tables, I can just ask an agent to do that for me. So rather than doing all those searches that I had said, I can just come in and say, what are the right tables to use to analyze customer lifetime value? So again, this is a live demo. Okay, so here, Claude Desktop, the agent, is going to takes a look at my query, and now it starts to think through, rather than me thinking through, what are all the different questions that I should ask? So you can see it's doing a number of different searches. It's searching on DataHub. It's gathered some results, and now it's going and actually reviewing each one of those results looking at its trust signals, looking at the documentation, looking at all that context that, again, DataHub has been able to gather together from all different sources. And now it's able to print out that summary. So this already feels pretty amazing and pretty magical to us. Something that can be challenging, can produce a lot of overhead, is now so much easier and so much more accessible. What we see with initial folks who have tried this out is people who maybe before might have been intimidated to try to look for data, might not be familiar with the world of data landscape, or might just be really busy with a lot of tasks and not having the mental overhead to do these types of searches and analysis. Now they actually have access to data discovery that they didn't have before. Here I'm getting printed out this summary, and I'm able to go and start doing my work. So again, this might feel pretty magical, but Harshal's going to take over, and he's going to explain exactly how he did this. So let me transition it over to Harshal right now.
Awesome. Yeah, so I'm going to take you through a kind of deeper deep dive into exactly how that demo that we just saw actually works. So in order to start, we just have to kind of go back to kind of the beginning. Before we hit agents, before we hit MCP, kind of need to talk about just like how do all of these things fit together and what is actually going on under the hood. In order to do this, we're going to do a slightly more technical deep dive than we typically do, but I think it's important to build an intuition for how agents actually work, how they interact with the world around them, and why we find MCP so exciting. So first off, an agent is just something that combines LLMs with tools. And I'll kind of expand on what exactly this means through an example. So let's say that I'm a user, I'm using like a chatbot type system on my phone or something, and I ask it, will it rain tomorrow? Pretty typical type of question. We pass that to the agent, and the agent has both this message history, but it also has some tools available to it. In this case, we've given it a get user location tool and a get weather tool. And in the bottom left, you'll see we've also defined for each of these, what inputs do they take? So the get location doesn't take anything as input, but the get weather tool requires a location before you can, get the weather for that location. And there's nothing magic here. Like get weather might actually just be like a Python method that uses requests, makes a request to weather.com and fetches some weather information. So these are just regular old functions. In fact, when tools were initially created or like rolled out, it was actually called function calling. So now the agent passes this information to the LLM. What specifically does it pass? Well, it passes all of the tool definitions and message A. And it will get back as a response message B. Now, message B basically says the LLM looked at the available tools, it looked at the question that it was provided, and it decided, I don't have enough information to answer this question yet. We need to use a tool to get some of that information. And so it returns back to the agent a request that says, hey, can you call this tool for me? And it says, specifically, I want you to call the get user location tool, and there's no arguments for it. Now the agent is the one that actually goes and executes get user location tool. Maybe this is on a phone and it uses the GPS, and it gets back that we're in San Francisco, or at least I am. And so it says, it adds to the message history, tool call result is San Francisco. And now the agent has decided, all right, it's time to make another call to the LLM. This call, the request includes messages A, B, and C, plus, once again, the tool definitions. And so notice that the LLM has the full history of all of the messages, but it also can see that, hey, we just called this tool and we just got this result back. From there, the LLM will say, hey, I still actually don't have enough information to answer the user's question. And it returns back a request to the agent that says, hey, can you call the get weather tool? Now the agent is the one that then goes and calls get weather. It passes in the input that the LLM told it to pass, and it might get some result back. And it will just add that to the message history once again. And then finally, the agent will make one more LLM call. And this time the LLM says, actually, I do have enough information to answer the question. And so it will return a different message format where it will say, I'm the assistant, my message is, no, it will not rain. And so now we can pass, the agent can pass that response back directly to the user. So the important things to note here, one is everything is orchestrated through the agent. The LLM has the schema for the tools or for the functions that the agent has available, but the LLM doesn't actually call anything directly. It just requests that something be called, and the agent is the one that calls those on the LLM's behalf or in service of the LLM. And then the other piece to kind of note here is the agent makes multiple requests to the LLM. As it continually builds up the history, it will make additional requests with more and more information. And that's how the LLM kind of gets the information that it needs in order to make the next decision. The last thing that I want to emphasize is the LLM is the one that decides which tools to call. That's kind of where the power comes from. If the agent had a hard-coded list of you need to call A, B, and C, or get user location and then get weather, it would not be able to generalize to other types of questions. If I had asked what's the location in Paris, it wouldn't need to call get user location. It would just call get weather immediately. And so the LLM has this ability to kind of deal with that nuance and make those intelligent decisions. And the agent is just kind of orchestrating and allowing it to get the information that it needs. So that's all great. Where does MCP fit in? I think you might notice that one of the problems here is the LLM had the list of tools that were available to it, and it also had, or the agent had the list of tools that were available to it, and it also had the actual definitions of those tools. So it could go and call get weather and make that API request and do all of that. The problem is often we've got a lot of different things and we want this to be a little bit more dynamic. And so the solution here is some sort of server that, one, exposes the list of tools that it has available, and two, has an API for the tools where you kind of pass in the name of the tool and the arguments, and you just get back the results from that call. That is an MCP server. In other words, it's like a tool registry plus a tool executor. So what does this look like in practice? Once again, you've got the same diagram here, but now instead of the tools being directly hooked up to the MCP client, there's instead, or hooked up to the agent, there's instead a DataHub MCP server, and this has the list of tools that are available to it. And there might be other MCP servers as well, each with their own set of tools. And the DataHub MCP server knows that it has a search tool and a lineage traversal tool and a couple others. And so the MCP client, when it initializes, will say, hey, tell me what tools do you have available? It will get back the response. And then whenever it gets a query from a user, it will pass that list of tools that it got along to the LLM. And if the LLM ever requests, hey, I want you to call the search tool, then the MCP client or the agent will send an API request to the MCP server, say, hey, I want you to execute search with this query, and it will get back the results. And then the MCP server is the one that can go and make requests out to, third-party tools. In this case, make requests out to DataHub, but it could be out to any other tool or any other system that you would want. Why is this so exciting? The reason is broadly that LLMs are only as useful as the information that they have available and the actions that they can take. Right? LLMs, they make great chatbots and you can talk to them, but if you actually want to get any real work done, they need to have some information about you, or they need to be able to do something. And tools are that mechanism through which they can collect information or take actions in the world. And MCP is super exciting because it allows kind of a universal plug and play where DataHub just publishes an MCP server, or any other vendor or platform publishes an MCP server. It exposes those tools, and then any client can just connect up, and it will be able to start using all of the rich information and capabilities that are bundled up inside of that. And you've probably actually already used a number of MCP clients or agents. If you're using Claude Desktop or Goose or Cursor, Windsurf, like all of these things are MCP clients. And they all do the same process of making tool calls, getting results from the LLM, making the next tool call based on that iteration. So you've actually already probably used these even without knowing it. Two other details to show. The first is local versus remote servers. So, if you've got a laptop, the MCP client or the agent can connect to a server that is running locally. In this case, it's not actually a server that listens to a port, but it's instead just like a sub-process through which you can communicate information. But it works largely the same way. And then for remote MCP servers, the MCP client talks to them over HTTP, and there's specific protocols for how that works. And there's some pros and cons to each one. I guess one other thing to note, the local MCP server could also do whatever it needs to do. It could talk to external services over HTTP. It could just use your file system or run bash commands or whatever it is as well. There's a bunch of pros and cons to each one. The biggest I would say here is local MCP servers are very easy to kind of set up or very easy to like hack on and develop on, but they're kind of a pain to set up. They require you to install a bunch of things locally, and it's hard to secure. Whereas remote MCP servers are kind of plug and play. There's no setup required locally. But they're a little bit more work to build. And so one of the things that we've announced as part of DataHub Cloud is we actually have a remote MCP server in the most recent release. But we also have a open source local MCP server that anyone can use that works with both DataHub open source and DataHub Cloud. And the reason for that is it is kind of the lowest common denominator. Anyone can use it, anyone can get set up, but it does require configuring a couple more things. With that, I'll pass it back to Gabe to showcase how we can kind of take DataHub and MCP to the next level.
Awesome. So thanks for walking through that. I think now folks have a little bit of a background of, what I showed and how we were able to go from this natural language question through the agent interaction with the LLM and also with the MCP server to get this response. So this first question, we wanted to keep simple. So that way, we could break it down and not throw too much at you at once. So now, as Harshal said, we're going to kind of show you the next level. So I started this presentation by talking about how excited we were about new tool developments like Cortex and Genie, and how how inspired we were by those, and how much we also felt like we could do to help provide them context. So taking this, let's just say I ended here with my question. Now next, I might want to go into a tool like Cortex or Genie to get the next answer to my question, which is maybe I want to know about customer lifetime value. So one thing I could do is come in. So here I have my Cortex. I could go create a new semantic model. Maybe this is called lifetime value. Select my database. Then I'll come in and select some tables. So here I could come in and go through, get some of those tables that had been recommended by that agent. Again, there's a lot of different tables that were recommended, so I might have to do a couple different searches. After that, once I get some tables, then Cortex might ask me to select some columns that would be relevant for the model. Then there's a following step that Cortex would offer where I could provide additional context like documentation, common join patterns, and things like that. However, I might start doing this and realize, wait a second, I'm just telling Cortex all this context that DataHub already has. So that's when we thought, hey, instead of kind of making that whole step where I have to go and repeat myself, we already have an LLM. We've got this super smart AI. Why can't we just have that help us? So that's the next stage. So instead of going through all that, let me just come into Claude. And again, we really only showed you part of the capabilities that first round. First time I just asked for, well, what would be the tables? But now let's say, okay, maybe I'll say, tell me about or calculate customer lifetime value by repeat customer versus one-time visitors. So here, instead of telling it just to do that search, I actually want to have that information. Again, this is a live demo, so let's see what happens. Okay, cool. So here it's saying, all right, I can help you. Let me use the Cortex integration that we've built with DataHub to analyze that data. So again, we already executed that search. The agent's aware of the previous chat, so it doesn't need to go do the search again. But if this was a one-time chat, it would have started with that search and then moved on to the Cortex integration next. So it looks like it did one query. Now it's doing a secondary analysis here. And let's see what happens. Okay. All right, looks like it's still doing some calculations and thinking. So while it's doing that, I just want to note, we're introducing a little bit more complexity here. When Harshal is showing you that breakdown of how this worked in the background, that was based on that initial setup where we were just interacting with DataHub. This new setup, you can see there's kind of a third party being brought in here, which is Snowflake is also being interacted with. So now we've got Claude, DataHub, and Snowflake. So you can see by pulling in that third party, the output now is even more advanced because we're able to kind of take all that amazing context that we had in DataHub and directly inject it into Snowflake. And you can see here, I get my result. So here with repeat customers, I have that average lifetime value of that versus the one-time customer. So by combining all that amazing context, again, all those lessons that we learned from enabling humans about relevancy with the search component, the consolidating in all the different unique information that DataHub is going to be able to aggregate, and then the Ubiquity piece of providing that to Snowflake, we're able to really have this absolutely unbelievably amazing result, which is I just came in here. I don't necessarily know what's the right tables, what are the set of tables, how this data is actually structured or stored. But by using the DataHub MCP server, I'm able to ask this natural language question and get an accurate, thought out response. So for us, with the initial folks that we're testing this with, we just found the initial results to be absolutely amazing, where people who maybe have never been able to get access to insights and data before are suddenly data enabled in a way that they've never been before. So again, we kind of took this to the next step in terms of what we're showing you here. So just to break it down, how we got here, I'm going to pass it back to Harshal, and he's going to kind of explain how we added this second step, second advancement.
Awesome. Thanks, Gabe. Let's just show a quick detail of how that actually worked. So what happened there is we actually added a second MCP server to the setup. And so now there's the original DataHub MCP server, which you already saw. And then there's also the DataHub semantic agent. We've called it an agent here because as an implementation detail, this thing is also making tools or calls to LLMs and using tools. And so there is kind of a little bit of a recursive thing going on here. But the important piece is the DataHub semantic agent can talk to DataHub, but it can also go and talk to Snowflake and to Cortex analysts within Snowflake in order to kind of help it write SQL and make sure that it gets like Snowflake syntax correct and things like that. But in order to provide the right context to Snowflake so that we can do a good job writing that SQL, executing it, we need to have some mechanism through which we can push that context down. And so in the case of Snowflake, that's intelligently provisioning semantic models into Snowflake. And so this can be done either if we've got an existing semantic model that we've built and just reuse it, or we might provision one on the fly to just push down exactly the information that it needs in order to answer the question. And this way we can, there's like quite a bit of sophistication going on inside of that, but broadly, this way we can make sure that we get exactly the right pieces of context from DataHub so that we can enable other tools to write SQL effectively and help you analyze your data. The initial demo that you just saw is with Snowflake. We're working pretty actively with the team at Databricks to add some additional capabilities on their end so that we can do something very similar for Databricks as well with Genie. So the MCP server that you saw in the first demo is actually, it's already available. If you're using DataHub Core, there's the open source MCP server that you can download and use as a local MCP server. If you're on DataHub Cloud, you can also use the remote MCP server that is rolling out as part of 0312. And then for the semantic agent, we're going to be launching that soon. And so stay tuned for some instructions on how to install that. We'll be announcing it probably through the DataHub blog, or you can just join Slack or our mailing list using that QR code. All right, now I'll pass it over to Maggie and Shashanka to talk about some of the great updates beyond MCP that are going on in the world of DataHub. Maggie, you're muted.
All right. Well, thank you so much, Herschel and Gabe. Amazing demo. Lots of activity in the chat as well. So excited. We're always excited to hear kind of, not only that people are stoked about what we're building, but also how people end up using it. So excited to hear from you all there. So I'm Maggie Hayes. I'm the founding product manager over the DataHub team. I'm going to walk you through our Oh my goodness. I'm going to walk you through, there it is. I'm going to walk you through our roadmap. I lost my tab for a moment, but we are back. So I'm going to kick things off with our DataHub core roadmap. We will also be talking about cloud. I will be sure to distinguish between those two so there's no ambiguity. So if you've joined us in a town hall in the past, just to kind of level set how we think about our roadmap, this may be kind of a familiar slide to you. I'll quickly go over it. Basically, when we're developing our roadmap, we break it into basically 4 different components. We look at initiatives to support with data discovery, initiatives to support data governance, and initiatives to support observability. On top of that is our really robust metadata graph and the platform itself. So we always make sure that we're prioritizing improvements and future development on the core platform itself in service of those other pillars. So we're going to go ahead and start with discovery. This year, so for all 2025, our key focuses in the discovery kind of realm are making sure that we are capturing human context around data for human-centered insights. So that's going to be anything from kind of capturing documentation or annotation and then pumping it back into your MCP server, for example. Intelligent exploration, so context-driven data exploration and navigation. And then last but not least, just really making sure that we're constantly investing in the completeness and reach of our lineage graph. So the work that we have queued up for this year, you'll see kind of a combination of items we already shipped. So on the integration side, of course, you blink and there's 30 more data tools for us to integrate with. So we're always trying to make sure that we're connecting out or integrated smoothly with kind of the top tools that folks in the community and our customers are using. So notably, I want to call out that since our last update, we have officially shipped both our Hex connector and our Vertex AI. I'm super excited to hear feedback on those. Those are really exciting kind of extensions of our metadata graph. The 2 that we have added to our near-term plans, support for Snowplow and RudderStack. So Snowplow for folks that are using it for their event stream generation, and then RudderStack would be for kind of ETL or personalization pipelines. The other thing that I want to make sure that we reiterate is that our Iceberg REST catalog is ready to use. It is in production. We announced this earlier this year. Shashanka and team have been hard at work working directly with our customers who are kind of power users on both DataHub Cloud and Iceberg REST catalog. So we're really excited that this is ready to go. Basically, what we're shipping here is Iceberg's or support for kind of a federated support for DataHub to seamlessly federate Iceberg queries. So this is ready for you to test out. Please, or start to use, not just test out. This is available for both DataHub Cloud and Core. And so we're super excited to continue to invest in and iterate on that integration. One of our so on the discovery side of things, one of the pieces of feedback we hear just across the industry is that lineage graphs start to get a little daunting to navigate, right? Our data stacks are very intertwined. It's beautiful that we can start to visualize them, but then sometimes those graphs get really complicated. So one of the items that we are working on this year is the idea of hierarchical lineage. So not just that kind of data set to dashboard view, but maybe actually a schema to schema or platform to platform. So you can kind of zoom out and see that 30,000 feet view of your lineage graph. So we actually have already kicked this off with our data jobs. So if you're Airflow or Dagster or Prefect users, kind of grouping together tasks within a DAG or within one of those jobs. So we have kicked that off. We're going to be kind of iterating through our support on it, and very excited to start to kind of get that higher, more summary view of lineage relationships. One other thing to be on the lookout for later this year, so second half of 2025, I can't believe that it's already the second half of 2025, my goodness. But we are going to be expanding our entity support to bring in a metrics catalog. So for folks that are adopting truly just a metrics catalog or a semantic layer, this is going to be a really exciting one for you. So in the spirit of time, I'm gonna start zooming a little bit. The next pillar we have is our governance. So the key focuses in 2025 for governance is universal data registry. So visibility into every data set, AI model, data transformation dashboard, whatever that might be in your stack. DataHub is the central or kind of universal data registry for that. On top of it, having a centralized compliance initiative so that you have your centralized approach to ownership, documented purpose, PII classification all in one place. And then last but not least, policy enforcement. So partnering or integrate with partner tools, to implement cross-platform compliance policies. So in terms of what that looks like this year, we have we've been working with our cloud customers on BigQuery and dbt term and tag sync. So basically when if someone comes into DataHub, they add a tag or they add a term in DataHub, we'll actually push that back to the source and then also pull that information if it changes in the source. So really that bi-directional functionality between those. So we've been working with this with our cloud customers. We will be shipping the BigQuery and dbt actions back to open source this year. Another really big exciting thing, and I think this actually came up in chat, is the idea of a logical data set. So you can think of this as kind of like, representation of a data set that is then materialized in different platforms or different warehouses or different applications. So really just kind of having that parent-child relationship between here's the intended structure and purpose of a data set, and then kind of keeping that separate from the children or kind of the materialized children. So we've kicked this off. We do intend this one will be an iterative process to make sure that we really nail it, but keep an eye out for that one. Next up is observability. So our focuses for 2025 on the observability side is making sure that we focus on accessibility. So democratizing data quality and making it understandable by everyone. It's not just people who are deep in the weeds looking at, kind of like binary unit tests on data quality, right? Like we want to make sure that this bubbles up to all users and is consumable and actionable. Next part is making it collaborative, so centralizing our tracking, communication, and resolution of those quality incidents, so you can minimize kind of back and forth between teams or stakeholders. And then last but not least, making sure that observability is contextual, so that that quality is observable next alongside to the business context. So earlier this year, we shipped out some big improvements to our usability of our assertions feature. So this is assertions around the type of data that should appear for a given asset. That could be at the column level, table level, et cetera, but really just making sure that those assertions are easy to navigate and manage at scale. The other thing that we recently shipped on the open source side or on the core side, is an enriched view of incidents. So now when you have a data incident, let's say, pipeline failed or there's an outage, whatever that might be, your incident, you can now actually see a detailed view of the status, the stage, and priority, along with assignees of that incident. So you kind of have that whole incident management lifecycle at your fingertips. Last but not least, we'll talk about our metadata graph. So our focuses for this year are big improvements to our APIs and SDKs. So we want to make sure that you're able to automate both the registration and enrichment of your metadata and retrieval, regardless of if you're coming into the UI. We also want to make sure that we're doing that really well on our backend with our APIs and SDKs. Also focusing on our quality of service, so making sure that ingestion and user experience is really performant, and then big improvements to audit logging and tracing. So in terms of what we have recently shipped and for you to get your hands on, we have made some really, really, really big improvements to our Python SDK over the past few months. It is now silly easy to programmatically define relationship edges between entities. We've completely simplified the approach to it. So I highly recommend taking a look at our recent improvements to the Lineage SDK, along with our basic search and dataset creation SDKs. Coming up next will be endpoints that are or functions that are more tailored towards AI-driven use cases or kind of managing your AI assets. The other thing I want to call out is there's a really good chance that if you're, since you're in this call, that you have run our quick start in the past. And if you have done that, maybe it took a little while to build, or maybe you saw an error that you weren't really sure what to do with. We're putting the final touches on some very big improvements to our quick start package itself. It's going to be much faster to build. It's going to be much faster to kind of pull everything, get it up and running. On the other side of it, it's just much more stable and performant. And big bonus, it's going to take up less resources on your laptop. So if you're if using Docker has ever kind of slowed down your your day-to-day or non-Docker things, this will definitely help with that. So keep an eye out. I will point out this is a breaking change. So we'll be sure that we have really robust guides and documentation to go along with that. For the remainder of the year on the platform side, we are going to be rolling out service accounts. So for folks who have been asking for that, that is on the horizon. And sorry, I'm going a little bit faster. I've kind of zooming through this, but here's kind of our high level view of what this quarter looks like. So we talked about DataHub Core. I also want to touch on our latest release in DataHub Cloud, which we just announced this week. It's likely that you got an email for it. I believe we're also going to be posting a link to the blog in chat. Number one, DataHub MCP server. We had Gabe and Herschel talking to us about this, giving us an amazing demo. This is available for our DataHub Cloud customers as of 03/12. And later. So if you are on an earlier version, you can work with, we're in the process of rolling out the deployments. So if you notice that you're on an earlier version, please work with your DataHub associate and we will get you going there. For DataHub Core, we have also open sourced our MCP server. So we're gonna, if we haven't already, we will have in chat docs out to our guides so you can kind of learn how to get that managed server, the self-hosted server going on your side. I already touched on some of the Python and SDK, the Python SDK for lineage and observability improvements. So I'm gonna kind of skip that one. The one thing I want to call out on the right-hand side is for folks who are using our compliance forms for your kind of governance, setting governance standards and delegating out those tasks to the appropriate people. We now have the ability to actually notify people either through by sending them an email to say, hey, Maggie assigned you to this compliance form. Check out your task center inbox and you can kind of get moving on that. We also have support for for sending those via Slack as well. On the interpretability side of things, interpretability of observability, there we go. We made some huge improvements on DataHub Observe. I'm like blown away by how much progress we've made in such a short amount of time. So number one, let's say you set up a monitor on your data set, a smart assertion on your data set, and it says, hey, this looks wonky. It looks like an anomaly. We now have the ability to have you come in and either mark those data points as not an anomaly, this is expected, or wait a minute, you guys should have caught this one, or the smart assertion should have caught this one. So what this does is it feeds back into our ML algorithm to then make sure that we're incorporating that feedback to give you more precise alerts over time. On the other side of things, data observability, or folks that have invested in observability or data quality checks know that the volume of checks can get really high. So we've rolled out kind of like a bird's eye view dashboard of your data health so that you can not only see the kind of coverage of checks across your data assets, but also the overall health so you can really target where you're putting your attention. Two more things, I think. Okay, so number one on the AI docs generation side of things, just want to call this one out again. We've made some really big improvements to the performance and kind of experience for this. So if you are on DataHub Cloud and you are looking for ways to really supercharge or fast track your documentation generation for your data sets, I highly recommend checking this out. This is now available in public beta, so you can enable it within your instance on as of 0.3.12. Yeah, we just made some really big improvements to both performance and just also, well, mostly performance. And then last but not least, on this one, we have our Databricks bidirectional metadata integration. So again, this is kind of back to that, what I was talking about before, where when you're making changes to an asset in DataHub, you're tagging it, you're enriching it in DataHub, we're actually going to push that information back. So we've rolled out our support for Databricks. Last but not least, we have given our ingestion data source page quite a bit of an uplift, so it's just much more user-friendly to navigate. But on top of that, we now have the ability to not only see who scheduled an ingestion run, so you can kind of understand or have like a little bit of an audit trail of who was managing these. You can also assign owners to ingestion sources. So as you start to federate your ingestion strategy within DataHub, you can remove you and your team as kind of that central bottleneck and start to delegate out ownership of ingestion runs. That way, if something, if there's a failure, if something is not, if it's not pulling in the information you were thinking, or you want to tweak what information is pulling it in, we actually have kind of permissions and policies behind that as well to really fine tune who can do what for that, for those sources. So there's a QR code on the screen. Highly recommend taking a look at our blog post so you can kind of see all this in action. And with that, I think, Shashanka, I'm going to hand it over to you.
Hello, everyone. Oh my God, you are a chatty bunch. My fingers are just hurting from responding to all the questions, but love it, love it. Thank you, everyone, for all of the questions and for being so engaging. I know Gabe and Herschel worked pretty hard to make sure that this demo went off flawlessly, and we are really excited that we're able to bring this experience to the community. A lot of questions around, when are we going to get this? When can I start playing around with this? Hold your horses. We are putting the final touches on. So the MCP server that you saw is, of course, already open source. You can use it today. We launched MCP Server Remote with DataHub Cloud. So DataHub Cloud customers don't even need to install anything locally. And the semantic agent that Herschel demoed for the conversation with Cortex is also going to be available for the community to use. We're just putting the final touches on the packaging of everything together and writing good docs, because docs matter. And thanks for all the love on the SDK. We have been putting in a lot of work in making sure that development experience is really nice and easy. And your feedback matters a lot. So thank you for sending love our way, and also sending your emotion and frustration our way. It helps us understand what are the pain points that you face and what are the things you really want resolved. So thanks for engaging. In terms of where we're going next, I wanted to actually take a little bit of time to talk about where we've physically gone in the last few months. And it's been quite interesting for us to actually go to a lot of in-person events. As data, we usually just have done a lot of virtual events. But this year, especially this quarter, we've done a lot of in-person events, whether it is AI and data walk into a bar events that we've done at a few cities, or going up and attending Snowflake Summit and Databricks Data and AI Summit. And I got to meet so many champions of DataHub from around the world, many that I knew over Slack, but I had never met in person. Harvey walked up to me. He's a senior data engineer and now manager, I think, at Grab. And we spent a whole hour talking about LLMs and semantic search. And that picture on the top left is Harvey, and I didn't even know he was taller than me. That's usually my biggest, revelation when I meet anyone outside of Zoom. They're always taller than me. But then later on, I met Stephen Poe. He was at Coursera. We had interviewed him for Humans of DataHub back in the day. Maggie and Elizabeth probably remember that. And he dropped by the DataHub booth, and Gabe and I took a quick picture with him. He's off doing other amazing things in crypto. And then I met Chris D'Agostino, Chief Data and AI Officer at FIS Global. We chatted about, the future of data and AI and all of the interesting things to do at the intersection of Snowflake and Genie. A lot of the conversation centered around exactly what we talked about today. How do we make AI talk to data, and what role does DataHub have in making sure that AI agents and AI activity has the right context and the right meaning and the right guardrails when it's working with data? So exciting times, and you see a lot of faces here. Jen hung out with Matt Graveen from DoorDash. He's another big DataHub champion. Swaroop and I hung out with Jay Como over at T. Rowe Price. So it's just amazing to see how big the DataHub community has become across open source as well as cloud. And we have people who are still working in the trenches. Atul, I'm so sorry we didn't get a picture together. Atul has been a big DataHub champion from the early days, and he's at Genworth and has contributed to DataHub as well. It's just phenomenal how far we've come as a community, both in virtual and now in person. So we're going to do a much better job of letting everyone know when we are going to be in person at different cities and events around the world. And we'd really love to meet all of you in person. So watch out for that. We have a really well-staffed marketing team now, and they're going to be doing their best in keeping the community informed about everything that we are doing. Jen is going to be keeping those messages coming your way. So look out for those messages and emails or emails in your inbox. Make sure they don't go to spam, because otherwise you'll miss out on some of these opportunities. With that, I'm so excited about the future and the fact that we wrapped up just on time. But more importantly, Metadata and AI Summit, still virtual this year. Our goal is to become in person eventually. This year is going to be also virtual, but we have a call for papers for the first time. So instead of being invite only, this time we have an official call for papers. Send us your stories. We want to hear all the great stories about how you're bringing AI and data together with metadata, what you're doing with DataHub, what you're doing with data tools and AI tools. All conversations are welcome. With that, we'll wrap it up, and Jen, take us home.
Yeah, thank you all so much for joining us today. We appreciate your time and really look forward to seeing your suggestions come through for Metadata and AI Summit. And the recording will be shared with you shortly, and we'll see you at the next town hall. Thanks so much.